Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into, so let's just jump into it. First question is going to come from Mitch or Mike or Michelle. It's hard to read these usernames when they're all smushed up, all lowercase like this. I'm going to just call you 1356. All right, so 1356 axis. Q, is there a non-QB in next year's draft class you're really fired up about as a game changer? Let's say we have a top 10 pick. All the QBs are gone. Is there a player that I love in that 2026 class? And then you bring up Caleb Downs as an example. That's who pops up first to me, is Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs, a safety prospect. He played at Alabama. He's played at Ohio State. He was absolutely phenomenal at Ohio State last year. I'm trying to look through some of these big boards, right, the non-QBs, because I do think next year's class is going to be pretty QB heavy. There's a lot of talk about Caden Proctor, 6'7", 360-pound tackle prospect coming out. Jeremiah Love's cool, but I don't think Jeremiah Love's I would go first round with him. Jermon McCoy. Yeah, I would have to say the only guy with confidence I can say is that, well, I think Avion Terrell is pretty good too. But the only guy with confidence I can say would do backflips for if the Browns drafted him today that's draft eligible in 2026 is Caleb Downs. That's a non-quarterback. For those of you who don't know, Caleb Downs is not only a great defensive player, a great safety, which the Browns, could use another playmaker at the safety position next to Grant Delpit. But what Caleb Downs is a playmaker, a guy who, has some Earl Thomas to his game, but also somebody who got a little Patrick Peterson in his game when it comes to his ability to return the ball. He's one of the most dangerous returners in college football, too. So you're talking about somebody who's going to help you on 1.5 sides of the ball, kind of a similar conversation that we had with Travis Hunter, right? Except for Travis plays both sides. You get about a half side of the ball with Caleb Downs, but I think, honestly, he'd be a tremendous add to any team, and he's the best safety prospect to come out in a while. So, yeah, that's the guy I would go with right now. I think he's the only guy that really jumps out. We're talking 2027. I'm going to say Jeremiah Smith because I would draft him today. I would trade 2 first-round picks to take him today. That's how good I think Jeremiah Smith's going to be. Step Bro says, what 2 players are you most excited to watch this year? Could offense, defense, rookie, vet? I got Tillman and McGuire. So this is an interesting question. Depends on how you interpret it, right? The way I'm going to choose to kind of answer this question is not who I'm the most excited to watch because I think they're going to break out, but the players I'm most intrigued to watch on both sides of the ball, right? The guys who I have enough questions about that I really want to see how it happens, right? Offense, I think DeJuan Jones is a player that I'm going to be very invested in watching throughout the year. I think how he plays this year at the weight that he is, it's going to really determine what the Browns look like over the next 5 years. I also think QUINSHON JUDKINS is going to be very important to watch this year. I agree with you on Cedric Tillman, but those are the 3 guys that I would be super excited to see what they do offensively if we're going to leave quarterback out the conversation, because I think it's only fair to leave quarterback out the conversation because obviously everybody's going to default to going to whichever quarterback they like the most or the least. All right, defensively, I'm going to throw Mason Graham out this conversation because obviously everybody's excited to watch your 5th pick in the draft. I think Carson Schlesinger and Martin Emerson are the 2 that I'm really keeping an eye on, right? Because there's a lot of questions about JOK's future. Carson Schlesinger, if he can be good earlier than later, really does clean up a lot of these concerns you would have about the linebacker position long term. And Martin Emerson, right? He's the big question mark this year. 2 good years, 1 bad season. Let's see what he does this year, because that's going to really determine what direction that arrow's pointing for him as he comes to the end of his contract. So he's somebody that I would be very interested in paying attention to as well. Aaron Zorkic says, Q, do you think Pickett's struggles in Pittsburgh were scheme related, development related, or talent related? Does he have any potential upside left, or is he a finished product? This is the big question with Kenny Pickett. It's clear to me that the Browns are on the side of, hey, there's more to unearth there with Kenny Pickett. He got thrown in a very conservative Pittsburgh offense and really was not allowed to be himself. This is somebody who a lot of people, not myself, but a lot of people felt like was a first round talent. And it's fair enough to give him a shot. He looked fine when he was out there in Philadelphia, and even his time in Pittsburgh, he was bad, but they were still able to win with him. So I could see how you could think that there's something left there with Kenny. I think the issue with Kenny that we're going to figure out is whether his conservativeness in the passing game, his inability to attack downfield, was because he was in Pittsburgh or because that's how Kenny Pickett likes to play football, right? The lack of using the middle of the field. Was that a Pittsburgh thing or was that a Kenny Pickett thing? We'll know the answer to that, a month into the season if he plays quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. But that's the big question for Pickett. And honestly, I think the person who answers that question the best in that quarterback room will be the starter for most of the games throughout the season, right? The quarterback that has the least amount of issues with throwing intermediate passes accurately, that guy's going to be the starter for most of the season because that's an integral part to this Kevin Stefanski offense. Next question comes from the real Brother Brown. All right, Brother Brown. What up, Q? If the defense can equal or excel its achievements of the 2023-2024 season, do you see the Browns possibly overachieving what most analysts are currently predicting their record will be? Possibly even a playoff win or two. Whoa. Even with just okay quarterback play. I think we would have to agree on our definition of what just okay quarterback play is, right? The Browns have, anywhere from 12th to 16th ranked quarterback play, and their defense is playing at a 2023 level, then that is a football team that can get to a conference championship if everything goes right? But we're real far away from being that football team, at least at the quarterback position, right? The delta from going where the Browns are, which we were ranked 46 in the NFL last year of quarterbacks. We had 46 and 47 of quarterbacks who had over 100 snaps in success percentage. Going from that to somewhere near the top 10 is an astronomical leap. So yes, if the Browns are able to get that astronomical leap of quarterback play, this is a team that could overachieve. The real question with this football team is, are they going to capitalize on the little things well enough to play this low margin style of football that everybody's projecting that they're going to play? The problem with playing the way that the Browns are going to play, as I mentioned, is that it has a low margin of error, right? When you're going to run the ball a lot, when you're not going to have a lot of explosive plays, you're not going to put the points up, you have a low margin for success. What that means is taking a couple of bad sacks can completely derail your offensive game plan. Getting a couple of false start penalties can completely derail your offensive game plan, right? Like small things like that for a team that has like a Joe Burrow that can get you something on 3rd and 15 aren't a big deal, become massive deals to teams that want to play like the Cleveland Browns play. And the question is, are we going to be tight enough execution-wise to be able to capitalize on these opportunities, right? One of the things that I've always credited Pittsburgh for and why they go over 500 so consistently is competence wins football game. And at the end of the day, Pittsburgh tends to be more competent than not. Right. And one of the big parts of this is kicking. Chris Boswell is at the very least a extremely competent kicker, if not a above average one, probably the best kicker in the NFL right now. And because he's that, a lot of these low margin games you're able to make up for because you're making consistent 40, 50-yard field goals. You're getting points off of these drives, which tends to add up over a course of a game. You're not missing extra points, small stuff like that. That's why Pittsburgh doesn't go under 500. Yes, it's part of what Mike Tomlin brings, right? You're not going to hopefully lead the league in offensive penalties when you have an experienced and, a lot of continuity on the offensive side of the ball and all of that. But really, it's just the reliance on competence. Can the Browns have that same level of competence when we don't know who the quarterback's going to be? We don't know who the kicker's going to be. We're not really sure what the offensive line's going to look like. And even our run game, we're leaning on a couple of rookies. This is why I err on the side of caution with this season and think that the Browns are going to struggle with offensive consistency for most of the year because it's a lot of new moving parts. Now, that might build a really good foundation for 2027, and we'll see that being put together in 2026. But unless we get a astronomical leap of quarterback play going from like 46th and 47th of all quarterbacks with over 100 snaps in success rate to somewhere around, 12 to 16, which would be a astronomical jump, then probably looking at an under 500 season. But I don't think this is going to be a bad, like a under 500 season where you watch the team play and you're embarrassed week by week. I think this would be a season where you see what they're trying to build and you see how much getting one or two more pieces on offense can really change the outcome of what we're trying to achieve next year, right? We're going to see it. I would say this season, my guess is that this season is going to feel like 2018. The Browns didn't make the playoffs in 2018. The Browns weren't an amazing football team in 2018, but you saw the groundwork for what could happen later on with this team in 2018. I think the same thing will be true with this year, right? The Browns are still under 500 that season, but it doesn't feel like a lost season because we all had fun. Big Bird only says, who do you think what went down with the Nick Chubb situation could happen to other Browns fans' favorites? It seems to me Andrew doesn't care about keeping the fans happy with keeping a fan favorite who gave everything to the Browns when David Njoku, Denzel Ward, and any other star doesn't look like they're the same in their prime years. In 3+ years, who might they just let go because they aren't the same player? Might be an emotional question for me, but I think Andrew Berry is very heartless overall. But I guess it could be what the franchise needs to be a contender. Look, at the end of the day, the fan base is only going to be happy with Andrew Berry if the team is winning, right? You can keep Nick Chubb, you can cut Nick Chubb, but if you win 3 games next year, nobody's going to be happy with Andrew Berry, even if you kept Nick Chubb on the roster. It's not going to stop somebody from yelling, "Fire Andrew Berry," right? So in reality, Andrew Berry's job is to help the Browns win football games, and that's the only way people are going to be happy with him, whether he makes decisions to achieve that fans like or don't like. Now, I agree with you. I think Andrew could stand to be a little bit less cynical, right? This isn't the first time he's moved on from a fan favorite player with kind of little fanfare, right? I think he could stand to understand and appreciate the emotional context of some of the stuff that he's doing, like the Baker Mayfield thing ending the way it did screams of, that kind of callousness. The same thing happened with Jarvis Landry. Like, we can stand to be a bit more tactful in these situations if you're the Cleveland Browns. That being said, the Browns are going to operate like any other football team. And when these guys start getting old, unless you're like Myles Garrett, it's probably going to be time to get up out of there, right? Like Denzel Ward, if he starts getting old and expensive, and the Browns aren't in the place to pay old and expensive, it's probably going to be deuces, right? David Njoku, if he starts getting old and expensive, then it's going to be time to chuck the deuces. Like, a lot of this is how much does the price match what the player is that you're getting back. The Browns felt like Nick Chubb at this point in his career did not match the price tag of $2.5 million for whatever role they had envisioned for him, given that they want to give carries to Dylan Sampson and they want to give a bulk of the carries to QUINSHON JUNKINS. So, 100 to 80 carries to them for Nick Chubb was just not worth it at $2.5 million. They're going to do what financially makes sense for the team, and that's how they're going to operate. And yes, there is something heartless about that, but that's kind of the nature of the general manager job, right? Like, these are the guys who have to cut everybody at the end of the day, right? Like, their job isn't to make you feel good. Their job is to make those tough decisions. And it's kind of why the general manager position exists, because coaches decided at some point, hey, man, it's not great for me to have to make all of these decisions that impact people's lives while still trying to build personal relationships with everybody in that locker room, getting people to play for me. That's kind of a good chunk of why the general manager position has existed. Now it's kind of morphed into its own thing at this point. But yeah, it's just one of those jobs where being the Grim Reaper is part of it, and you're going to be the dude who has to go out there and announce a very unfavorable decision or a decision that nobody wants, and you just got to be that guy, right? And that's part of Andrew's job. And, it sucks the Nick Chubb situation, not being able to bring him back. But if he's right about it, we're not really going to be tripping come November, right? We'll still respect and, want the best for Nick Chubb. But if QUINSHON and Dylan Sampson run for over 1,500 yards at like 5 yards a carry, we'll start to understand why the move was made. Even people who are ardently against it, right? They'll just trade in their Nick Chubb jerseys or, retire their Nick Chubb jerseys to the closet and buy QUINSHON JUNKINS one. That's kind of the cycle of fanhood. Luke says, what's up, Q? If Shador Sanders outperforms Dylan Gabriel in camp, joint practices, and preseason games, could you see the Browns play him over Gabriel, or do you think since Gabriel was a third-round pick, they want to play him first? I've thought about this a lot, right? Because I think that scenario is very possible, that Shador outplays Dylan Gabriel. It's obvious that he's outplayed Dylan Gabriel, and that puts the Browns in a bit of a conundrum. Because if I'm the Browns, me personally, not because I think Shador Sanders is the worst quarterback that you have, but because I think Shador Sanders provides the most upside and is the youngest quarterback in that room right now, I want to make sure when I put him out there, there is nobody I can bench him for, right? Like once it's Shador time, nothing else interrupts that. So to me, I view it kind of like a concert, right? Most people are viewing this, whoever goes out first, that's the most important quarterback. I view it the opposite. Whoever comes out last at quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is the featured act. And I think the better Shador Sanders looks, the more likely it is that he's the last quarterback that they throw in, because they will just kind of burn through Joe Flacco. Maybe they don't even burn through Joe Flacco. They just have Dylan Gabriel go out there. Maybe Dylan keeps the job. Maybe he doesn't. And then put Shador out there once there's no energy to bench somebody because Shador is there. Because what could happen is that if Shador goes out first, and Joe Flacco's still sitting there, Dylan Gabriel sitting there, and Kenny Pickett sitting in your practice squad, and that first 6 weeks of the season is incredibly rough. You play Pittsburgh, you play Cincinnati, you play Minnesota, you play Detroit, you play Pittsburgh in the first 6 weeks of the season, and in Green Bay. So 3 NFC playoff teams in your entire division in the first 6 weeks of the season. It's not hard to imagine that might be a slate a rookie quarterback struggles with. And if Shador goes like 1 of 5 in that run, which would be fortunate, because honestly, if you look at these teams, it's hard to imagine with the rookie quarterback, the Browns would sneak a win out against any of these teams. So let's say worst case scenario, they go 0-6, right? 1-5 throughout that stretch. Well, then you're going to have a situation where people on the team, coaches, and fans alike are going to want Shador Sanders to get benched, because let's see what we got in Dylan Gabriel. Let's see what we got in Joe Flacco. Maybe it can look a little bit better. So that's why I don't think that starting week 1 is the prize that people think it is in this quarterback competition. I'm doing a video about it later because so many Shador Sanders fans are upset that he's not going to be the day 1 starter, or it doesn't look like the Browns are trying to make him the day 1 starter. And I need people to understand that being the week 1 starter is no prize for this team. You're being sacrificed. Like, think about this like a concert. The main event is the last person to come out. You don't want to be a part of this opening act, right? And it looks like they're priming up either Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett and probably Dylan Gabriel to get slaughtered throughout that opening act. And then Shador gets his chance. So if I'm the Browns and if I'm Shador Sanders and if I'm a Shador Sanders fan, later the better. Week 1, not a prize. Get out there after week 6. Best case scenario for you, so you can hit the ground running. And because Shador's not the number 2 overall pick, and he's a 5th round pick, that means he can get benched. So if you want to protect him against that, so he can have as much time to have highs and lows as possible, so the coaching staff gets as much patience with him as possible. And I just don't think starting a dude that you want to develop like Shador, week 1 is a good way to develop him. Like, I think you want him to come out last, right? If you're not big into Dylan Gabriel, you probably want him to be sacrificing them first 6 weeks, because I find it hard to imagine that the Browns are going to have amazing quarterback play the first 6 weeks of the season. You know, it's going to be a tough slate. It's going to be a real tough slate. Look at those defenses. Talk about the best defense in the NFC, maybe the other team that's in that conversation, in both the Vikings and the Lions. Then you have that defensive front in Pittsburgh, at Pittsburgh. We know the problems that playing in that stadium has given this team. The Baltimore Ravens, who are always a solid defense, and the Bengals, who aren't a good defense, but if they handle business with Trey Henderson, still have the sack leader from last year and a defensive player of the year candidate on their defensive line, which, again, a rookie quarterback versus a dynamic pass rusher like that, usually not a good combination. The prize is not starting week 1. The prize is whatever guy gets to play last. That's the guy that the team cares about the most, is the dude that they put out there last, in my opinion. We'll see if I'm right on that. They might just throw somebody out there week 1, but I just don't see how this thing is structured, that being the first guy out there is the prize. I feel like that is what you get if you land in second place in that quarterback competition, or what you get if you're one of the vets and you win that competition. It's a setup, dog. Like, I don't know how more people aren't looking at that and saying that to themselves. Like, it must just be blind faith in whichever rookie you like, because there's no world where I would. If the Browns drafted Shador number 2 overall, I'll be telling y'all right now, we not starting him till week 7. So like, this has nothing to do with like, I don't think Shador is good or not. It's just like nobody should go through that their first month and a half in the NFL and be expected to just walk out of that with no scars. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yellow says, do you think this year's team will be fun? Not just in a win every game sort of way, but just a fun team to watch. I think so. I think they'll be smash mouth. I think they're going to give you, and I think they'll give you moments, and they might even get some upset victories. Like, this is the kind of team that I think will be a pain in the side of every team they play. You know, like, I feel like the Browns' role this year is to kind of operate in the same way that a team like the Colts has operated over the last couple of years, where like they're kind of in the playoff hunt. But what the Colts really are like the last team you want to play in between big games, right? Like, you play Kansas City next week, but you got Cleveland this week. And Cleveland's the kind of team that can catch you slipping, because we play really tough. We play really physical football. And we're just a rough team to get by. Like, you might be able to beat us because you're more talented, have a better quarterback, this, that, the third. But every game should be competitive. And every game should be tough. We should be a tough opponent. And I think that's what people want the Browns to be. Win some games here, get some licks in there. Like, I'm not saying, we could be a tough 0-16 team. Don't nobody want that. But if you're a tough 7-8 win team or 7-9 win team, we're going to feel pretty good about that, because we know, hey, we get a quarterback, this offensive thing can go from, a tough situation to anything, to something that can really change the game, and be one of the best teams in the NFL. You want to see that foundation for a good football team, right? 2018 is what you want to strive for, or want this season to feel like. You want it to be fun, like 2018 was fun. And kind of so you can see the pieces. 2022, if you subtract the Watson games from that, because that ended up being an absolute disaster at the end of that season. But you could see the fundamentals of why this team could be good in the future. While you were watching that team and what they needed to just get answered clearly. Staples says, hey, I have a question about the future of this O-line. The projected starters this year are Jones, Bitonio, Posick, Teller, Conklin. All of them except for Jones are on the last year of their contract. And it looks like the room will be completely different after last year. Bitonio is likely to retire. I think Posick and Conklin are gone after this year. I assume Zinter replaces Bitonio. Who do you think the Browns' plans are for each open spot? Do you keep Teller around, or does Junkins step up, or will they fill in the remaining hole, with either one of their first picks? So Zach Zinter probably steps up, takes over for left guard. DeJuan Jones stays at left tackle. I think you bring back Ethan Posick and probably Wyatt Teller. Jack Conklin would probably be replaced with the draft pick. That's my guess on how that would break down. I don't think you want to replace more than 3 offensive linemen, so that's why I think they will keep Posick and Teller, because they're good, they're fine. Unless Posick's an absolute disaster this year, I think they'll keep him. He's still under 30. Same thing with Teller. And that way you're not replacing like the whole line. You're just replacing 2 guys, one with somebody on the team and then one with probably a highly drafted rookie. You could use one of your double first round picks on that. Jerry says this. Q, Tyvis Powell, whose opinion I really respect, is concerned and confused about Shador not getting first team reps. Are you worried about first team reps in minicamp, or should we wait until training camp to get a real QB evaluations? Love the content on the grind. I respect Tyvis, but I disagree with him on this one. I don't really think minicamp is the place where you want to see Shador get elevated. Like, let this thing get to training camp. Let this thing get to the preseason. Let this thing get to joint practices, and then we can have a real conversation about if Shador should move up the quarterback rankings. Honestly, unless Shador looks like so much better above and beyond everything else that you have, I would highly suggest that the Browns avoid putting him out there week 1, because that gauntlet's nasty. This first 6 weeks of the season. If Shador shows promise, if Shador looks better than Dylan Gabriel, if he looks better than Kenny Pickett and slightly better than Joe Flacco, I still would throw Joe Flacco out there for those first 6 weeks and then put Shador out there. Unless Shador looks so good that you can make that astronomical leap from quarterback, like we mentioned earlier, right? Where he's like Jaden Daniels good and he automatically puts you in the top 15 of quarterback play if you were to start him week 1. Unless Shador is that unbelievably good. Which, again, we're talking about something that the number 3 pick in the draft did last year. We're talking about Shador Sanders, who, look, even the people who loved Shador in the draft community weren't talking about him being a top 3 pick, right? Like late first round kind of prospect. So he would have to overperform every single projection that exists for him, even by people who supported him at quarterback 1 in this draft, by a significant margin. And he would have to prove that in the 2 months of training camp. That's very unlikely. So unless that happens, I don't want Shador starting week 1. Not because I don't think there's a chance he could give you the best chance to win, but simply because what's best for this team long term, if they see any promise in Shador, is to make sure that when he gets out there, he gets a good chance to show what he has and to build on what he has. And putting him out there in those first 6 weeks just does not give him the best chance possible to develop, in my opinion. So I'm not concerned about this. I'm not in a rush to see this, right? I think a lot of people are getting caught up in their excitement. They're being caught up in what's good for content. They're getting caught up in what's good for entertainment value and all this nonsense. And like not really thinking about what's best for Shador himself, the Cleveland Browns also in the long term. And because you want what you feel like Shador should deserve, which is to be a week 1 starter, you're not even thinking about the messed up situation you'll put him in. You would have this guy face those 6 teams that we've mentioned earlier with Joe Flacco a fan favorite, breathing down his back potentially. With Kenny Pickett, a former starter who's won games in this division, breathing down his back potentially. Like, you put him in a terrible situation. You put him in a situation where the fan base gets split on him. Like, no, let's just wait a few weeks and put him in when everybody can get behind him. Because, like, yeah, maybe this season might not be what you want it to be. But honestly, you have 2 first-round picks. This is a season where you have already made the determination that you're doing a strategic pivot, as Andrew Berry says. Why risk throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, why, in my opinion? Just let it happen. Ain't nothing wrong with putting something in the oven, man. Like, we can wait on this, right? If Shador is really this guy that everybody thinks he is at the OTAs, and he shows that in training camp, ain't nothing wrong with letting him cook a little bit. If you can let Patrick Mahomes cook for a whole season and he turns out fine, you could let Shador Sanders sit 6 weeks. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get the rush. I'm not in the rush for this at all. I'm understanding that the evaluation for Shador Sanders is not going to be done by the end of this year. The evaluation process to figure out if Shador is going to be a great NFL quarterback is probably going to be a 3-4 year thing, right? Doesn't mean you don't draft quarterbacks in that time or whatever it is, but the idea that you're just going to know what Shador is because he played a couple of games this season is ridiculous. Like, think about it like this. Baker Mayfield, to the day we traded him, we were debating whether that guy was good or not. Hell, 2 years after we traded him, people are still making that debate. It took until this season, his 6th season in the NFL, for people to be like, nah, Baker's good. Baker's good. He's a starter. It took 6 years to really actually get a real evaluation on him. That's usually how long it takes. We're thinking we're just going to know everything there is to know about these guys in like 15 games. It's not going to happen. So why rush it? Take your time. Put this guy in a good situation. Because you know what I don't want to come back here and think? Hey, man, what if we didn't ruin Shador by putting him out there against a murderer's row for the first 6 weeks of his career? What if we actually had let this guy develop behind the scenes and then put him out there when he was ready? I don't want to do that. I don't want Shador Sanders as another listed quarterback that the Browns couldn't get the most out of because we ruined him. Like, if you really think this dude's a good prospect, why are you advocating for the Browns to do the least responsible thing, which is to play him week 1? It's so irresponsible. Look at that schedule. And I'm not saying that's how you feel about it, Jerry. I'm saying we're so caught up in this that we're not even thinking about that. It's like you get a Rolls Royce and you immediately want to take it to the destruction derby to see how fucking durable it is. It makes no sense. It's like wearing your new J's to the club the first day you get them, knowing they're going to get stepped on and creased. Like, you want to enjoy them for 2 minutes? It's wild. It's wild. It's like buying a pair of new limited edition J's and then hooping, not like in a game, but like at the rec in your brand new J's. It's just like, why would you wait? That's so irresponsible. You're not getting the most out of them shoes. You're not even respecting it. That's how I feel about this whole Shador thing. It's like people got this new thing, it's all fresh, and they excited about it, and they want to jump in the mud with them Air Force Ones the second they take them out the damn box. And it's like, don't nobody want to just wear night. I'm starting to sound old. Let's get to the next question. Rick Bone says, hey Q, why haven't the Browns and Junkkins agreed to a contract yet? I see him training, yet no contract. That's because the Browns didn't pull any nonsense with his injury waiver like the Bengals did, right? The Browns gave him a standard injury waiver. Junkkins will probably come to a deal right before training camp when everybody's back into the building. I really don't anticipate that being a problem. And even if Junkkins does not have a deal, they probably will work something out to where he can at least practice while they figure it out. So I wouldn't really pay that much attention to it. If there was going to be, Shamar Stewart level mess with this, it would have happened already. And that's why what's going down with Shamar is happening right now instead of at training camp, because the Bengals pulled some mess with his injury waiver as well. So that's why. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.